Story number 1. This happened in the fall of 2021 when I was living alone in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. It was my first time ever living by myself. And even though I was technically an adult, 27 years old, with a full-time job and a stable routine, I still had a lot of nerves about the whole idea. I'd just gone through a rough breakup and I thought that maybe some silence and solitude would help me process everything. The townhouse was part of a small row of identical units. Kind of plain, but clean and quiet. Tucked away in a sleepy little cul-de-sac just off a rural highway. The neighborhood had that sterile, suburban vibe, lots of beige vinyl siding, neatly trimmed hedges, wind chimes, and mailboxes with family names stenciled on them. Most of the residents were older folks with a few young families mixed in. I didn't know any of my neighbors well, and honestly, I liked it that way. I kept to myself. But almost right away, I noticed one person who stood out. He lived 3 doors down. A tall, heavy-set man, probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a strange habit of standing outside his house at night. Sometimes he would just pace slowly along his front walk or smoke. Other times he'd do nothing at all, just stand there staring. I'd pull into my driveway after work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he'd be, leaning against his porch railing or standing right at the edge of his driveway, facing the street. He never waved, never smiled. Even if I looked directly at him, he just stared. I tried to ignore it. I mentioned it to a couple friends and once to my mom. They all said maybe he was just a night owl. Maybe he had insomnia or some kind of routine. But there was something unsettling about him. It wasn't just that he was always there. It was the way he was there. He didn't fidget, didn't check his phone or shift his weight. He didn't even blink that much. He just stood there, still and silent, like some kind of statue, watching, but never interacting. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just on edge from the move, the breakup, and living alone. But as the weeks passed, that gnawing feeling in my gut kept growing. Then the noises started. It was sometime in mid-September when I first heard it. I had just gotten home from work after a long shift. I worked late hours managing inventory at a distribution center, and I usually got in around 10:30 p.m. exhausted, grabbing a bite to eat, then crashing in bed. That night, I fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 2:37 a.m., I woke up to a sound I can only describe as metal scraping against wood. At first, I thought I had dreamed it, but then I heard it again. A long, slow creaking noise, like an old, rusty gate swinging open. My bedroom was on the first floor at the back of the unit. I had a sliding glass door there, covered with vertical blinds. It opened out to a small, fenced-in backyard. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and just listened. There was a pause. Then I heard footsteps. Soft, crunching sounds like someone walking slowly across gravel. My entire backyard was lined with decorative rock instead of grass, so every step was loud and unmistakable. These weren't animal noises. I knew that instantly. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed. I didn't have a weapon. Just a dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand, just in case. At the time, it felt a little ridiculous. Yeah? Not so much. I crouched by the edge of the window and peeked through the blinds. I couldn't see anything. The motion light wasn't on, which meant either they were out of range or they had come in a different way. I dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm. She asked for my address and said officers were on the way. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. About 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through my front window. I stood up, opened the door, and met 2 officers outside. I told them everything. What I'd heard when it started, where the sound came from. One of the officers walked around the back while the other stayed with me and asked questions. A few minutes later, the first officer returned. He said the backyard gate was closed. No signs of tampering. Nothing looked out of place. He said he'd write up a report just in case. But they hadn't seen anyone. No footprints. No damage. Basically, no crime. One of them actually muttered, probably just a raccoon, and gave me a look that clearly said, "You're wasting our time." I didn't argue. They left after another 10 minutes, and I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went out back to check the yard myself. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a flat stone about the size of a paperback book wedged under the bottom edge of the wooden gate. I hadn't noticed it before. The gate had a heavy spring that made it close automatically, but this stone looked like it had been placed there intentionally to keep the gate from shutting all the way. It was subtle. The kind of thing someone might do if they planned on coming back later and wanted to slip in quietly without a sound. I picked up the rock and threw it across the yard. Then I called the police again and told them what I'd found. They said they'd update the report, but again reminded me there wasn't much they could do. I asked if they could talk to the neighbors or check for security cameras. They said no. Unless a crime had been committed, they couldn't investigate. I felt like I was losing my mind. 2 nights later, it escalated. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke up again. This time to the sound of my back door handle turning. At first, it rattled gently like someone testing it. Then a harder jiggle, like someone trying to open it. I sat up in bed, heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't see anything through the blinds, but I could feel it. Someone was on the other side of that door. My mouth went dry. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called the police again. While I waited, I crouched in the hallway out of view from the back door. I didn't have a gun. No dog. Just that stupid kitchen knife. A few seconds later, the motion light clicked on. Through a tiny gap in the blinds, I saw a shadow move across the glass. It was a man. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He just stood there. The same 2 officers showed up again. This time, they actually found something. Footprints in the gravel, big ones, leading straight up to the door. But still, they said, since no one had entered the house, there wasn't enough to go on. They promised to patrol the area more often and reminded me again to keep my doors locked. The next day, I bought a camera. It was one of those mid-range Wi-Fi security cams. I set one up above the back door and another above the front porch. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the live camera feed on my phone. 2:14 a.m. came and went. Nothing. Then at 2:23 a.m., the back camera triggered. A man stepped into frame. He walked through the gate like he knew exactly where to step to avoid the motion sensor until the very last second. He was tall and broad, wearing a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, jeans, and gloves. He walked right up to the back door, looked up at the camera, and smiled. A slow, stretched-out grin. Then he backed up, still staring, and vanished into the dark. I called the police again. They came back, watched the footage, and finally admitted yes, it was unsettling. But since he hadn't broken in, hadn't damaged anything, and didn't appear to be armed, they said once again there was nothing they could legally do. They wouldn't even ask the man down the street to check his doorbell cam. I begged them. They said their hands were tied. That night, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel. When I came back the next afternoon to grab a few things, I noticed something on the back glass door. 4 muddy handprints. Too high up and too low. Like someone had crouched down and just rested their hands there for a while. Watching. I moved out a week later. Broke the lease. Forfeited my deposit. I didn't care. I couldn't sleep there another night. The final straw came the morning I left for good. There was a note, wedged inside my mailbox. It was written in small, cramped handwriting on a torn piece of lined notebook paper. It said, "The cops leave, but I don't. I filed one last report." The officer who took it looked genuinely disturbed by the note. Not annoyed, not dismissive, disturbed. He promised they'd do a wellness check on the neighborhood. But it was too late for me. I never went back. About a month later, I got a message on Facebook. It was from a girl named Kayla. She said she'd just moved into the unit I used to rent. Her message said, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you used to live here. Did you ever have someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard? I keep hearing footsteps at night. And last night, someone knocked on the glass door around 2:00 a.m. and just stood there." I didn't reply. I didn't want to know what happened next. Story point 2. I work for a property preservation company. Basically, we handle foreclosed homes, securing them, cleaning them out, winterizing them. Sometimes, if there's been vandalism, we even have to board them up. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well. And for the most part, it's quiet. You spend a lot of time alone in houses that used to belong to people who are long gone. Sometimes it's sad. Sometimes it's just boring. But every once in a while, you get a house that feels wrong. That feels off. This happened in 2020 when I was assigned to clear out a property in a rural part of upstate New York. It was one of those dying towns. Only one gas station. Half the businesses were shuttered. The roads were cracked and overgrown, like nature was slowly erasing everything. The house itself was a small, one-story place off a dirt road. It was surrounded by overgrown brush and woods on 3 sides. No neighbors. No passing traffic. Just trees and silence. According to the file, the house had been foreclosed after the owner, an elderly woman, passed away. No heirs had stepped forward to claim the estate. The utilities had been shut off for over a year. Our job was simple: catalog any remaining property, empty the house, and secure it for winter. I drove up on a Monday morning around 9 a.m. in a small box truck with all my gear in the back. From the outside, the house looked intact. The windows were closed. The door was locked. Roof seemed fine, but weeds and vines had completely taken over the porch, curling up around the railings and halfway up the doorframe. I had to shove the front door open. It had swollen in the frame, probably from moisture. Once I got inside, it looked pretty standard. Dust everywhere. Stale air. Faded furniture. Then my work phone rang. It startled me because I had no signal out there. I'd already checked. No bars. Nothing. But the phone buzzed anyway. There was no number on the caller ID. Just 2 words: unknown caller. I answered. There was nothing. Just low, crackling static like old radio interference. I said hello twice. No reply. I walked slowly down the hallway, phone still in my hand. It rang again. And again. I reached the doorway and stared inside. The rotary phone sat on the nightstand, the receiver trembling slightly with each ring. There was no chance I was picking up that phone. I just stood there and watched as it rang. Eventually, it stopped. I backed out of the room, breathing hard. I wanted to leave. Every instinct in me screamed to get out. But part of my job was securing the property. And I still hadn't checked the basement. I almost said screw it. But something made me keep going. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I just didn't want to admit how scared I was. The basement door was in the kitchen. I opened it slowly. The stairs creaked beneath me as I stepped down, flashlight in hand. The air smelled like mold and rust. Along the walls were shelves stacked with old paint cans, broken furniture, bits of junk. In the back corner, I saw a small table. On it was a cordless phone, a newer model. It was gray plastic coated in dust. And next to it, a stack of yellowed notebooks. I picked one up and flipped through it. Each page had a name, a date, and a sentence. Lena H., July 3, 2019. Rang once. Didn't answer. Carl M., September 12, 2019. Picked up. Warned him. It went on like that. Dozens of entries. I dropped the notebook, and I swear I felt my heart drop with it. I looked around the basement, suddenly certain I wasn't alone. That something or someone was watching me from the shadows. I rushed back up the stairs, flashlight shaking in my hand, looking behind me the entire way. I didn't finish the job. I drove straight back to the office and turned in my report. I didn't tell them everything. I just said the property was unsafe and that there might be squatters or some kind of interference. They reassigned the job to another crew. 2 days later, I got a text from one of the other guys, Mark. He'd gone out there that morning to finish the job. I hadn't told him what happened. Not really. But his message read, "The phone in the bedroom with no service rang while I was in there. What the hell?" I called his work cell immediately. He picked up, and the first thing he told me was that he didn't answer the phone. Said he was too freaked out. Got out of the house as fast as he could. The next day, Mark quit. No notice. Never came back to work. He's not dead or anything. I looked him up on Facebook later, just out of curiosity. He's posted stuff since then. Still out there living his life. But I never spoke to him again. I don't know what else he saw inside that house. But it must have been something bad enough to make him walk away from everything. After Mark quit, our boss finally called the police. Reported possible trespassers or squatters. They sent someone out to check the place. But they didn't find anyone. The house was empty. Everything about that place, the location, the weird, decaying interior, the phone calls to my cell. The voice on the line. And that damn rotary phone ringing in a room with no working service. It felt like something out of a horror movie. I still don't know what happened. But I swear to you, it had to be one of two things. An elaborate, sick prank. Or an equally elaborate trap. Story number 3. This happened back in 2019. I was in my late 20s, living alone in a small rental house on the quiet edge of town. It wasn't anything fancy, just an older, one-story place with creaky wooden floors, thin walls, and a modest backyard. But the rent was cheap and the house came with a basement. I used that space to store some extra furniture, tools, and random stuff I didn't need every day. I moved in during spring. For the first few months, everything seemed normal. The house had its quirks, sure. The pipes rattled whenever I turned on the shower. And there was this one kitchen cabinet that always swung open by itself. Pretty annoying, but nothing too strange for a place that old. The basement, though, was a different story. The door to the basement was in the hallway next to the bathroom. It was heavy and stuck a little every time I opened it. The light switch wasn't at the top or bottom of the stairs, it was halfway down. That meant every time I went down, I had to step into total darkness for a few seconds before I could flick the light on. The first time I went down there, I felt off. Not exactly scared, but definitely uneasy. The single bare bulb barely lit the corners and the smell of old, musty wood hung heavy in the air. Still, I didn't spend much time there. I just stored my things, shut the door, and didn't think about it. That all changed around late October. I usually got home around 3 a.m. from my night shift job as a security guard. One night, I was heading to the bathroom to get ready for bed when I heard it, a faint knocking sound. 3 soft taps. They came from behind the basement door. I froze in place, heart suddenly pounding. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the pipes were shifting or the house was settling. But I stood there, holding my breath. Then, I heard it again, 3 distinct, slow knocks. I stepped back a few feet and stared at the door, waiting for something else. But only silence answered me. I whispered to myself, it's just the house, even though deep down I didn't believe it. I didn't open the door. Instead, I went straight to my bedroom, locked it, and stayed awake for the next 2 hours, every sound making me jump. Eventually, I fell asleep with the TV on. The next morning, I checked the basement. I opened the door, went down the stairs, and turned on the light. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. No footprints in the dust. No broken windows. No sign that anyone had been down there. I told myself it had to be the house settling, or maybe a small animal had gotten in somehow. I tried to move on, but a few nights later, it happened again. This time, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard it. Not 3 taps, but 1. A loud, sharp knock, like someone rapping their knuckles hard against the basement door. I opened the bathroom door and looked around. The basement door was closed. The hallway was quiet. I walked over and pressed my ear against the wood. At first, nothing. Then faintly, I heard it breathing. Slow, steady, like someone was standing on the other side, waiting. I stepped back, my skin crawling, and went back to my room, locking the door again. I called my landlord and told him something strange was happening in the basement. I said I thought maybe someone had gotten into the house. He seemed skeptical when I told him about the noises, but he said he'd come by to check it out. The next morning, we went down into the basement together. He looked around carefully, checking the windows, the walls, even the foundation. There was no damage. No broken locks or signs of a break-in. No evidence of animals either. I didn't say much. I couldn't explain what I was hearing, and I didn't want to sound crazy. For the next week, everything was quiet. I started to think maybe I was just overtired or imagining things. After all, I had been working a lot. But then one night, around 2 a.m., I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard it, the basement door creaking. It wasn't a knock or a slam, just the slow, grinding sound of the hinges moving. I sat up straight and turned the volume down. I could hear it clearly now, the slow creak of the door swinging open. I got up and peeked down the hallway. The basement door was wide open. I hadn't touched it in over a week. I grabbed a flashlight and slowly walked toward it. I didn't have a weapon, but I knew I had to find out what was going on. I stood at the top of the stairs and shined the light down. The basement was pitch black. The bulb wasn't on. I reached around the corner and flicked the switch. Nothing. The bulb was dead. That's when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. They weren't rushed. Slow, deliberate steps. But they were definitely footsteps. I backed away, my hands shaking. I slammed the door shut and held the handle tight. For a moment, I felt pressure on the other side, as if something was leaning against the door. Then it stopped. I locked the door and called the police. I told them someone was in my basement. They arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers cleared the house and went down into the basement. I waited in the front yard, heart pounding. After what felt like forever, they came back up. They said they found no one. No signs of forced entry. No one hiding. Nothing disturbed. One of them tried to laugh it off and asked if I'd been watching scary movies. But I knew what I heard. After they left, I didn't go back inside right away. I just stood there, staring at the house. Finally, I went back in, locked every door and window, and stayed up until sunrise. That morning, I bought a padlock and installed it on the basement door. I didn't care if it was allowed or not, I needed it. For the next month, the basement stayed quiet. No sounds. No knocks. Nothing at all. I almost let myself relax. Then, one night, I came home from work and noticed the basement door was open. Not just unlocked, the padlock was lying broken on the floor. The door itself was slightly ajar. I hadn't touched that door in weeks. I stood there staring at it, frozen. That's when it hit me. Every time something strange happened, every noise, every knock, it always happened at night when I was alone. I did not go down there anymore. I couldn't. I packed a bag, left the house, and stayed at a friend's place for a few days. When I came back, I literally nailed the basement door shut. I even wedged a chair against it. I didn't care if the landlord got mad. I just couldn't look at that door anymore. A few nights later, around 3 a.m., I was lying in bed when I heard a sound I still can't explain. It was a voice. Not loud, not even actual words. More like the barely audible rumble of someone's vocal cords. It came from somewhere beneath the floorboards, directly under my bed. That was it. I called the police again. They showed up, searched the place, and again, found nothing. So I packed everything except for the stuff in the basement. And I left. I didn't even wait for the lease to end. I don't know what was in that basement. And honestly, I don't want to know. Sometimes, when I lie awake in my new apartment, I think about all of this. And I wonder, if I had waited just a little longer, what would have come up those stairs? Story number 4. The day her husband came home, Claire Radley had already mourned him twice. The first time was when the phone rang at 3:11 a.m. and a voice, flat, official, told her Michael had died in a car crash. His vehicle crossed the center line, hit a semi, and caught fire. He died instantly, they said. No pain. The second time was at the funeral. Closed casket. White lilies. Silence thick as fog. Claire didn't cry, she just stood there, numb, listening to the absence of his voice. The absence of his presence. It rang louder than church bells. She'd been a widow for 6 weeks. Then someone knocked on the door. At first, she didn't open it. Just stare through the peephole, frozen. It was him. Michael. Tall. Wearing his favorite denim jacket. Hair uncombed. That same crooked smile like he was waiting for a punchline. She thought it was a dream. Claire, he said. Can you open the door? Her heart tried to crawl up her throat. Who are you? It's me. Michael. No. Couldn't be. She'd seen the casket lowered. Signed the death certificate. Kissed his wedding ring goodbye. But then he said something. Mouse. Her nickname. One only he ever used. Her fingers unlocked the door. He stepped inside. He looked perfect. Too perfect. His skin, his hair, even the scar above his left eyebrow. But something was missing. The smell. Michael always smelled like cedarwood and shaving cream. This man smelled like nothing. Michael, she whispered. I think so, he said. She didn't call the police until later that night. Locked in the bathroom, she sobbed while he waited outside, calm, patient, as if nothing was wrong. The cops showed up. Michael greeted them like neighbors. Offered coffee. Claire ran to them, shaking, begging them to do something. Anything. But when they checked his ID and ran his prints, everything came back. Michael Daniel Radley. Alive and well. But he's dead, Claire said. He died. I buried him. The officer gave her a strange look. Ma'am, there's no record of any death certificate. Nothing about a crash on Route 19. I have it, she cried. Upstairs. She ran to get it. The folder was gone. The obituary she clipped from the newspaper? Gone. Even the photos of the funeral on her phone, wiped clean. Michael watched her the whole time, his expression soft. Almost amused. I know this is hard, he said. But I'm here now. That's what matters. She wanted to scream. Instead, she nodded. And tried to pretend. In the days that followed, he cooked dinner. Folded laundry. Told her he loved her. Everything was the same. But it wasn't. Because Michael didn't sleep. He'd lie beside her in bed, eyes closed, body still, but never breathing deeply. Never shifting. Never dreaming. And he never blinked. Not once. She started watching him closely. Timed him. 30 minutes. An hour. Still no blink. She'd wake in the night to find him sitting on the floor beside the bed, just staring at her. Head tilted. Silent. One night, she cut her hand slightly, testing him. Michael took her hand. Lifted it to his face. And inhaled. Not like a concerned husband. Like a predator. You should be more careful, he said, voice low. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she went back to the police. She brought photos this time. One she'd printed of his gravestone. Michael Daniel Radley, 1982 to 2024. She had the funeral program. The receipt from the mortuary. The officer held the photo to the light. It's fake, she said. See here? The shadow's off. And the mortuary? Doesn't exist. Claire's stomach dropped. No. I was there, she whispered. I sat beside his casket. Ma'am, are you taking any medications? She left before they could ask anything else. That night, she tried to leave. packed a bag while he was outside mowing the lawn. But when she opened the door, he was standing there. No mower. No smile. "You don't need to leave," he said. "We're finally together again." She stared at him. "Tell me what you are." His face twitched, something moved beneath the skin like it was wearing him. "You miss him," he said softly. "I came back for you." "You're not Michael." "I remember him," he said. "I remember loving you." "That's enough." He turned, walked away. She didn't move for hours. The next day, she crushed sleeping pills into his drink, waited for him to lie in bed. When his breathing slowed, though it never quite sounded real, she ran. 3 towns over, she found an old friend who owed her a favor. A forensic tech. She gave him a strand of Michael's hair and begged him to test it. 3 days later, he called. "There's no match," he said. "What do you mean?" "It's human," he said. "But it doesn't match anyone. Not in our system. Not even close." She threw up in the shower that night. Because whatever was in her home wearing Michael's face wasn't supposed to exist. She decided to follow him. One night, around 2 a.m. he left. Just walked. No car. She trailed him quietly, headlights off. He walked 3 miles to the cemetery. He stopped at one grave. His. Michael Daniel Radley. He knelt down and placed his hands on the earth. And the ground shifted. It breathed. It moved. Then something broke through the soil. A hand. Gray. Twisted. Not human. The thing pulled itself out. A head emerged. Slick, eyeless, its mouth wide open in a scream that made no sound. Black smoke drifted from its throat. Michael leaned in, whispered something to it. The creature stilled. Then Michael turned and looked directly at her. She ran. By the time she got home, he was already there, sitting in the kitchen. Lights off. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. "What are you?" He stood slowly. "You called out," he said. "Your grief," it screamed. "I heard it. And I came. The thing in the grave." "That was me," he whispered. "Or what was left of me." "You're not him," she said. "No," he said. "But I remember what he felt. I remember you." Claire was crying now. "I want my husband back." "You have him," he said. "I took what remained and gave it form." She stared at him, shaking. "No," she whispered. "You're not him." He paused. For the first time, his voice cracked, not with anger, but with something sad. "I tried," he whispered. "I really did." Then he turned and left. Walked into the darkness. Gone. No one ever found him. No prints. No clothes. No sightings. Claire moved away. Sold the house. Now she lives in a city with too many lights and too much noise. The kind of place where silence can't sneak up on you. But sometimes she still wakes at night. To nothing. No sound. No movement. Only the sense that something is watching. And sometimes she wonders what really came back that night. Grief given form? Or something worse? Because when you beg the universe to bring someone back, something always answers. And it never gives without taking something first.